Thank you for joining us at this hour. I'm Daniel Choy here to provide you with the latest. The top North Korean officials made a surprise trip to Incheon on Saturday for the closing ceremony of the Asian Games. South Korea's point man on inter-Korean affairs met with them and asked a question on everyone's minds and tongue tips these days. Just where in the world is Kim Jong-un? Our Connie Kim starts us off.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has not been spotted in public for more than a month, raising speculation and questions among outsiders about possible health problems. But an insider says there's nothing to report. Yang-gon, who has been the North's top policymaker in charge of inter-Korean affairs since 2007, told South Korean Unification Minister Ryoo Kihl-jae during informal talks on Saturday that the young North Korean leader was fine. Ryoo said he had no reason to believe Yang-gon was not being forthright. In addition to meeting with Kim, Ryoo also met with the man regarded as the North's second most powerful, Hwang Byung-seo. Ryoo says Hwang asked him to deliver a heartfelt greeting to President Park Geun-hye. The high-level delegation from North Korea, which also included the top North Korean military official Choi Ryong-hae, made a rare, brief, and unexpected trip south of the border this weekend. Word that they would be attending the closing ceremony of the Asian Games in the South Korean port city of Incheon on Saturday came just one day earlier. It's raising expectations of a thaw in inter-Korean tensions. During the visit, the two Koreas agreed to hold a round of high-level talks later this month or next. Topics up for discussion could include the resumption of reunions for families separated by the Korean War and a restart of tours to North's Mount Kumgang Resort. If the high-level talks do take place, they would represent just the second of their kind since the leaderships of the two Koreas took power, the other coming in February. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Always expect the unexpected from North Korea. The surprise visit by three high-level North Korean officials to the south on Saturday has everyone wondering what their motive might have been. Experts in Korean affairs in the U.S. believe it was an attempt by Pyongyang to step out of its isolation. Joel Witt of the 38 North website says the trip bodes well for the future of North-South relations, but that the motive remains unclear. Bruce Cleaner of the Heritage Foundation said the visit was made in part as an appeal on the international community to lift sanctions. And two high-level U.S. officials arrive in Seoul on this Sunday evening for talks. U.S. Assistant Secretary of State Daniel Russell and Assistant Secretary of Defense David Scheer will meet with Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se on Monday. The big conversation starter is expected to be Saturday's trip by top North Korean officials to the south. The two Koreas agreed to resume high-level talks within the next several weeks. Washington's ongoing discussions with Tokyo over revising defense cooperation guidelines are also sure to come up, as are the annual defense ministerial talks between Seoul and Washington that are slated for later this month. A local think tank expects the Korean economy to grow 3.6% next year. That projection from the Hyundai Research Institute is lower than the 4% forecast made by the government and central bank in July. The institute cited a number of factors in its report. Domestically, they come in the form of the strong local currency, decreasing raw materials prices, and rising household debt. Internationally, the institute says slowing global demand and growing competition with China in overseas markets are likely to keep growth down. To turn the tide, the think tank suggests that the government continue to aggressively pursue its expansionary policies. Well, Korean exporters may be battling their Chinese counterparts in overseas markets, but Korean automakers are enjoying some success in China these days. Hyundai and Kia sold their 9 millionth automobile in China last month. This 12 years after the company first entered the market. It's been a good year overall for Hyundai and Kia in China. Cumulative sales over the first 9 months of the year were up 9.5% on year. The biggest contributing factor to their success, SUVs and compact cars. To make further inroads, Hyundai and Kia will begin introducing new models designed exclusively with Chinese drivers in mind. The amount of new foreign direct investment promised to Korea jumped 38% on year to a record high over the first 9 months of 2014. The Trade Ministry says the total came in at $14.8 billion, which is the highest ever for the January to September period. Leading the way was China, which saw new FDI pledges jump by more than 230% on year to $1 billion. New commitments from the European Union were up 84%. All of this came despite slowing economic growth at home and abroad. Thanks in part to the surge, the Trade Ministry says Korea is now likely to hit its annual FDI target of $17 billion. Around 96% of items bought by Korean shoppers from foreign sellers over the past 5 years have been purchased tax-free. The Korea Customs Service, in a report to the Finance Ministry, says that more than 35 million foreign direct purchases were made from 2009 to June this year. Among them, only 4.4% were taxed. Koreans can make a direct purchase of an item up to about $142 in value from countries other than the United States without paying taxes. The benefits, however, only apply for those who do not attempt to resell the items for profit. Some pro-democracy demonstrators in Hong Kong appear to be pulling back from some of the streets they have barricaded for more than a week. Looks like the ultimatum issued by the region's chief executive was effective, but tensions still remain high. Our Shin Se-min has this report.
The chief executive of Hong Kong, now facing a second week of mass protest, appeared on television late Saturday evening with a message for demonstrators.
It is urgent that all entrances to government headquarters be cleared by Monday morning so that 3,000 employees can go back to work at the main office complex.
If they don't, he said local authorities and the police were prepared to take necessary actions to make sure government offices and schools reopen. While he didn't threaten force, the statement certainly sounded like an ultimatum. But Leung's words appear to have only strengthened the protesters' resolve. Hours after the announcement, thousands of people flooded out onto the six-lane road that has been the main staging ground for the past week, creating the largest gathering in days. All of it is raising the prospects of a large-scale confrontation. Protest leaders called off planned talks with government officials on Saturday following clashes that activists called organized attacks. The activists have in recent days made two demands: that Chief Executive Leung step down from his post and that they be granted universal suffrage in 2017 elections that will determine their next leader. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Shifting gears to other stories now. Some 170 Korean students ranging in age from elementary to high school met Sunday at the 12th Convention on Biological Diversity held in Pyeongchang, Gangwon-do Province. Their three-day model conference had each student group seeking out ways to improve conservation efforts worldwide. The resolution set by the conference will be sent to Korea's National Assembly as well as to the United Nations. If you watched an opera or a musical recently here in Korea, you may have been impressed by the costumes worn by the performers, sometimes more so than the story itself. Stage costumes, in fact, are actually now taking on a bigger role in Korean productions. Our Hwang Ji-hye has the details.
One of Korea's best-known folk tales and love stories, Yang-gon, has been reborn in the form of a ballet. And it's the costumes that are sticking out in the performance. It took more than 6 months to complete the stage outfits, which took a classical ballet twist on the hanbok, Korea's traditional dress.
Hanbok contains the spirit of Koreans. The materials and colors that hanbok is made of exudes the spirit. I wanted to show those features of hanbok to the world.
A battle of warriors dressed in red and blue grabs the audience's attention. The silhouette of the costumes accentuate the dancers' waists and hip lines, adding to the impact of their choreographed dance.
I tried to emphasize the confrontation mode by differentiating their outfits. The costumes of one side are inspired by Western clothing, while the others are inspired by Oriental dresses.
And for the Korea National Opera's production of the Shakespearean love story Romeo and Juliet, a globally renowned designer is in charge of the stage costumes. As costumes are now taking more important roles in breathing life into the characters of a performance, more production money is being poured into creating costumes that perfectly fit the opera's story and music.
The most important thing about costumes for the theatre is that they tell the audience about the character. They should tell you the age of the character and the status and the class.
And thanks to these elaborate costumes that are taking center stage, audiences not only get to enjoy dramatic performances, but also vivid and bold fashions under the theater's spotlight. 황지혜, Arirang News.
Now the weather. On Monday, clear skies are expected nationwide here in Korea, but do brace yourself for a nippy morning and evening with temperatures dipping below 15 degrees Celsius. Now let's check out the weather conditions in other parts of our world. And that brings us to the end of our newscast for this hour. Thank you for staying with us. Have a great start to your week.